Yep, it's come to this. Turns out Wu's a creationist.
Argument 28. Evolution is sufficient to explain the origin of life, so God is not needed. This is more of a religion than reality.
Not according to any commonly accepted definition of the word religion. But you know what? No one says that. No one says that evolution explains the origin of life. That's not what evolution is about. The clue is in the name of Darwin's book, The Origin of Species, not the origin of life. Evolution is the theory that describes how life changes over time, not how it began.
Evolution has only been proven at the micro level, not the macro level. While small changes within a species have been demonstrated and observed, the theory that one species can transition to another has never been proven in any way.
This page lists a large number of examples of speciation events, along with references to the papers describing each observation.
No transitional species has been found that links humans to the prehistoric hominids or primates.
You may wish to get your information from sources other than Answers in Genesis, because there are more such transitional species than I'd care to list. Fortunately, I only have to list one to prove you wrong, so here goes. Homo ergaster, also known as the African Homo erectus. It's a hominid and thus a primate, and it's a direct ancestor of modern humans. It's exactly what you claim has never been found.
And the transitions that allegedly took place, if it did, was way too quick to be natural.
And how did you reach that conclusion? Not gonna tell me? No, and that's because you won't admit that you just pulled it straight out of your ass. I don't understand how it works, so that means I get to make shit up.
Humans are also not equipped to survive in the wilderness of nature and cannot compete with wild animals there in terms of physical strength and adaptability. Thus, they could not have evolved naturally in the wild through evolution alone.
A lot of animals can't compete with others in terms of physical strength, so guess what? They have other ways to compete. Maybe they reproduce quickly and in large numbers. Maybe they're small and can hide very well. Maybe they're fast. Maybe they're energy efficient. Maybe they live in large groups and can rely on strength of numbers. Maybe they're... maybe they're smart. Maybe they can figure out how to use tools. Maybe they're even smart enough to manufacture tools. Now, what if we have a tool-making animal that also happens to be social? Would that animal need to rely on physical strength to compete with others? No, bitches, we've got 20 guys with clubs and knives here. Early humans competed by being intelligent, which, by the way, also made them extremely adaptable. Damn, they'd be ashamed if they knew one of their distant descendants would say something that stupid.
Furthermore, no human fossils dating back beyond 200,000 years has ever been found.
That depends on what you mean by human. That's the age of the oldest Homo sapiens fossils. That's our species. There are other human species that are now extinct, like the aforementioned Homo erectus. But how is this an argument against humans having evolved? If modern humans first appeared 200,000 years ago by means of evolution from an earlier human species, then humans did not evolve? What?
And of course, science cannot explain how life began at all, or how the first cell became self-replicating.
Self-replicating chemicals predated the first cell, so that's not a problem. But what does this have to do with anything? Abiogenesis, the origin of life, and evolution are not the same thing. This is not an argument against the theory describing how life changes over time. Furthermore, the fact that science currently doesn't offer a conclusive answer to the question of how life began doesn't mean that it required magic, which is obviously what you're arguing for. You can't explain how it could happen naturally, so it must have happened supernaturally. In fact, while we don't know exactly how it happened, experiments like the well-known Miller-Urey experiment show that amino acids, the building blocks of life, can form under laboratory conditions, which would be impossible if magic was required.
Even Richard Dawkins, the most famous, staunch advocate of evolution, admits this. See the end of the Ben Stein film below for Dawkins' confession.
Admits? Confession? Look, it's not some deep secret that we're ashamed of. This is in high school biology textbooks. You're only using words like that to poison the well, yet again.
These unexplained mysteries and discrepancies have never been solved by the scientific establishment.
Even if that were true, how does this falsify evolution?
The scientific establishment has too much invested in its current paradigm to change its mind or rethink its theories.
The scientific establishment constantly rethinks its theories. That's why science changes over time, which is apparently something you deny. The issue here is that you want the scientific community to accept as its consensus a model that doesn't work at all in favor of one that works extremely well, and that's not going to happen.
They also ridicule and ostracize dissent so that scientists are required to toe the party line in order to keep their careers and be promoted. In other words, free thought or questioning is not allowed. In short, they've created a forced consensus that is run by pressure and punishment rather than free thought.
Questioning is not only allowed, it's required. The problem here is that creationists and other woo believers will question the scientific consensus but not their own beliefs. The consensus became the consensus because it held up to being questioned, makes useful and demonstrably accurate predictions, and continues to hold up under constant scrutiny by the most skeptical people on the planet, scientists.
To see an excellent documentary that explores the suppression of intelligent design in the scientific establishment and universities, see Ben Stein's revealing film Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed.
Yes, intelligent design, also known as creationism, is suppressed just like the stork model of human reproduction. Why would it not be? We know that it's wrong.
There are some researchers who have invested a lot of time in the subject and are worth listening to.
Yes, they're called biologists.
One such example is Lloyd Pye. For more info, see Lloyd Pye's website and book Everything You Know Is Wrong.
According to his own website, he has no qualifications relevant to the field of biology, much less evolution specifically.
Some researchers have argued that it's mathematically impossible for life to evolve by chance on its own because of the astronomical impossibility of the conditions for life being set up by chance.
And they're right. Unfortunately for them, no one is arguing that life either began or evolves by chance, but rather as a consequence of deterministic natural laws. That obviously means that those researchers aren't exactly the experts you think they are.
One thing the atheists can never explain is who set up the vastly improbable default conditions for life to evolve in the first place.
When did we establish that it was a who? Also, it's irrelevant to the validity of the theory of evolution, which only deals with how life changes over time once it's already in place.
Where did the matter to create the universe and life come from?
That question is nonsensical. Matter did not create the universe. Matter is a product of physical reactions in the universe. Also, it's irrelevant to the validity of the theory of evolution.
How did something come from nothing?
I'd really like to go off on a tangent here, but since I'd have to go on for a while, I'll resist the temptation. This is irrelevant to the validity of the theory of evolution, which deals with life, not cosmology.
It's like this. We know the mechanics behind how and why a pot boils, but that doesn't tell us about the person who put the pot on the stove.
The analogy presupposes that the pot was made to boil intentionally by an intelligent agent.
Some atheists also like to point out that the need for belief in God can also be explained by evolution. However, David Marshall, a Christian missionary and philosopher, rebuts that point when he stated in my discussion list, to make the jump from evolution can explain belief in God to there is no God without involved argument would be the generic fallacy again.
Okay, well, we're done with that rebuttal since it clearly doesn't address the issue. No one is arguing that religion, once giving our ancestors an evolutionary advantage, somehow proves it's false. But why even bring this up? Even if religion doesn't give an evolutionary advantage under any circumstance, this still doesn't constitute an argument against the validity of the theory.
Argument 29. Atheists don't claim that God doesn't exist. They lack belief in God. The burden of proof for God is on the theist, not the atheist. This is a technicality that atheists use to try to put the burden on the other side.
This is irrelevant since even if atheists did make the positive claim that no gods exist, and some actually do, theists still claim that at least one God exists, and as such have a burden of proof. You're also setting up a false dichotomy. You're implying that if one side has a burden of proof, the other does not. The reason why atheists don't have a burden of proof isn't that theists do, but that atheists in general, as you pointed out, aren't making a claim. If they were making claims, both sides would have burdens of proof, and the default position would be to reject the claims of both sides.
However, this makes little difference either way because their core philosophy toward God is still the same. Deep down, they believe there is no God and they know it.
Don't tell me what I believe as if you think you know more about that than I do. Don't tell me what I know as if you are more of an expert on what's in my head than I am.
The reason why they emphasize this is to try to put themselves in an unattackable position.
Yeah, that's the advantage of proper skepticism. It's the best position to take, and even the most ardent opponents of skepticism evidently acknowledge this. In other words, Butthurt Kitty needs to make another appearance.
It's a semantic ploy. To try to be consistent with it, they will say there is no evidence for God, rather than God doesn't exist, but sometimes they slip up.
Well, it may not necessarily be a slip-up. I won't claim that no gods exist, but I will happily state that God doesn't exist, where God, capital G, refers to a specific deity that is defined in a manner which is logically inconsistent or incompatible with observable reality.
They can't really prove that God doesn't exist because you can't prove a negative.
Yeah, so I've heard. It's not true, though. Let me give you an example. There exists no number which is both even and odd. Here's the proof. An even number can be written as 2n for some whole number n. An odd number can be written as 2m plus 1 for some whole number m. Assume that a number x is both even and odd. Then there exist whole numbers n and m such that x equals 2n and x equals 2m plus 1, meaning that 2n equals 2m plus 1. Dividing by 2 on both sides, we get n equals m plus 1/2, which means that n and m cannot both be whole numbers, which they are. This is obviously a contradiction, so our initial assumption must be false. There you go, I just proved the negative.
Regardless, the atheist obviously believes deep down that there isn't a god or deity anyway, which is prevalent in their attempts to debunk and refute every single argument for the existence of God.
No, I refute bad arguments because of this little thing I'm sure you've never heard of called intellectual honesty. See, if you make the argument that gravity must exist because Donald Duck doesn't wear pants, I will point out that that's a non sequitur. Whether gravity exists or not is beside the point. It's a bad argument, and no one should believe gravity exists because of that argument. Whether I want there to be a god or not is irrelevant. I don't want people to believe things that are not evidently true. If some god exists, demonstrate it. Don't play word games. Don't make fallacious arguments in the hope that the audience sucks at logic. Don't lie. Don't make emotional appeals. Demonstrate it. And since no theist will do this, it's pretty clear to me that they can't. Gee, I wonder why. See ya.